Now let's move on to the main session of today. So Chon Tang, his founding partner at Skydeck Fund, is going to share Accelerator's role during this challenging time. So as we all know, accelerators can play a very important role to help early stage startup company grow. So what are the trends for accelerators themselves after COVID-19? So I bet we are all curious to find out. So let's welcome Chon Tang to give us the talk. So I will.
Thank you, Yifu. You're gonna make me host, huh? Great, wonderful.
Yeah.
Before I share the screen, I'll just say a few words that people can see my full face before it's blocked by the slides. The first thing I want to say is I feel like people have preconceived notions about what a accelerator is, and when they hear that we're the official accelerator for UC Berkeley, they certainly have preconceived ideas about what that would be. I think most of us understand that just about any major college institution around the world at this point has some kind of a accelerator or incubator platform. I'm sure for all of you, you probably have a pretty good sense of what that accelerator looks like. It's usually a safe space where faculty, where grad students, where undergrads, maybe even some alumni can come, can do some work, can meet some accountants, can meet some advisors, and maybe even meet some investors, and think about how to commercialize that core piece of technology that they're currently working on. What I really want to convey to you before I even get into this core topic is that we're not that, or at least we're not just that. The model that we've carved out is pretty interesting, and I want to take some time to really go over exactly how Skydeck itself functions before we get into the main theme, which is what we're seeing in terms of the opportunities and the challenges that are being brought on by COVID. And I will make sure that we have a lot of time for Q&A as well, because I think that's extremely important. Okay, so let me now get into the share screen and get into my pitch deck here. I'll also say this is the first time I've shared this version of the deck, so hopefully I'll be okay on time. We'll see. All right, so Skydeck, why is it interesting? This is sort of the most basic understanding of what we are, okay? So as a official part of the school, even now I still get a lot of people that are sort of confused by that. Skydeck is essentially a lab on campus. We're actually physically one block away from campus, so we're part of the campus ecosystem. We have direct access to the massive pools of talent, all the faculty, all of the on-campus labs, and the partners and more that comes from the Berkeley community. And over these last, I would say, 3+ years, we've really become very well established in the Valley. There's all kinds of ways that we can think about how to validate or to think about that, but I would just point to the number of investors that come to our demo day. 2-3 years ago, we were at about probably 150, 200 investors coming to our demo day. The most recent demo day that we had in February, pre-COVID, was 650 investors in person. So there is not much doubt that our reach in the Bay Area to VCs, to angel investors and beyond has become quite clear, quite apparent. And this is the key point that I'm going to talk about. Why are we so influential? Why are we so well respected? Why are there 650 investors coming to our demo day? It's because we've really broken past the initial standard way of thinking about what a campus accelerator is, and we're now attracting high potential founders from around the world. Okay, and that global piece is critical to what we do. So to jump right into that, what we think we are building is the global hub for entrepreneurship. Okay, so historically, this kind of a program would be used to accelerate technology and talent coming from campus. Right? It's whatever the faculty are working on. Let's think about how to apply it. Well, now we want to add another function, another piece on top of that. we want to accelerate companies into UC Berkeley. So why, what does that mean? The core background here is really, I think all of us on this call are probably quite aware of this. Entrepreneurship is a global activity. Unlike what might have existed 5, 10, 15 years ago, there are budding founders on every continent on this planet, be it in South America, in the Middle East, even in parts of Africa, but very much definitely from Eastern Europe, from Western Europe, from Southeast Asia, from East Asia. I think all of us now, through excellent programs like this one, and YC School, and Techstars, and 500, everybody has come to understand that it's possible for 2 or 3 very talented founders to take a little bit of capital, to use it very efficiently, and to build a billion-dollar company. So it's never been a better time for those people with the human capital and the drive and the energy and the great insights to build a venture-backed company and turn into a billion-dollar enterprise. And correspondingly, we see governments and schools and angel investors around the world putting out grants, $500,000, $1 million. Again, on the basis of that initial capital and tools like AWS and beyond, you can now build a product. You can put the product in the hands of your customers, and you're able to validate that you're building something that customers will want to pay for. But now here's the part where it gets challenging and where we come in as the global hub for entrepreneurship. For many of these founders, their ultimate dream is to really raise from VCs in the Valley. That's less true, I think, for founders coming from China, because there is a huge community of active investors in China. But even there, we're seeing signs that some companies believe that the better pathway to grow might be here in the Valley. And for founders from Europe, from Latin America, their first choice is to come here because this is where all of the big name companies and the customers and the investors and the talent is. But it's very hard to gain access into this ecosystem. There's a couple dimensions of why it's hard. When you land here, it's hard now for an extra reason, because obviously it's impossible to get on a plane. But even without the COVID issue, even if you're physically here in the Valley, even if you're going to 100 events every single month, it's still challenging to find the right advisors, still challenging to recruit the right team when you didn't go to school here, when you didn't work here, when you don't have any friends, if you don't have that community already established here. It's extremely challenging to access the right customers. How do you approach them? If you cold call them, if you cold email them, they quickly see that you're a foreign company, and a lot of them will shy away from that. And it's extremely challenging pitching to the right investors. Unfortunately, although investors are willing to take a lot of risk, the VCs in the Valley are prepared to take a lot of risk on everything from technology to product to market. They're often not willing to take any risk on team. So if you went to a school that just because it wasn't in the US, you might be an excellent top academic institution, but if you don't have the context that allows a VC here to quickly pick up a phone and call a friend and say, hey, how was Chon? What was Chon like at his last job? If they don't have that ability to have context on you, it makes it much more challenging. Skydeck is built around making all of those things possible, and I will go into that in a little bit more detail. So why Berkeley? Boy, I think this slide can go quickly. It's obviously a top world-class institution. That's the origins of lots of great technology, lots of talent on campus. But one thing that I really do want to point out, because I'm going to come back to this, the most exciting part of what's available on campus for our founders might not be the faculty who've won the Nobel Prize. It might not be the access to amazing equipment. It might be the fact that we have 500,000 alumni. There are 500,000 Berkeley alumni most of whom, probably 80% plus, are still here in the Bay Area. They are in every industry, of course, from tech, but also government, healthcare, media, banking. They're in the C-suite, meaning they're the CEOs, we're CEOs. They're also in management, where they're on the front lines. And this community, we're able to activate them to help our founders, to help the companies that we invest in. Okay, so that's something again that I am going to come back to. And of course, we are just a critical part of the hub for the Valley ecosystem. When customers or investors from around the world come to the Bay Area, they're inevitably going to come and see us at Berkeley. And if they come at Berkeley, they're going to come and see us. Skydeck, briefly, this is the Accelerator, again, is a part of Berkeley. So the board for the Accelerator consists of Caroline. I'm sure a few of you have met her as well. She's single-handedly built this Accelerator program, done an amazing job. The board consists of the deans of the College of Engineering, the dean of Haas Business School, and the vice chancellor for research. And they are all actively involved in trying to make sure that our companies and our program can thrive. On the fund side, so the fund that I am the managing partner for is a independent entity. Okay, so it's a privately managed venture fund, and we are not backed by public capital. We're not backed by alumni. Our investors are private investors who are taking on the risk of investing in the early stage companies because they understand the opportunities that we present. Some of our LPs also serve on our LP advisory committee. They include large VC funds like Sequoia, Canvas, Mayfield, and Sierra. These are really some of the top funds here in the Bay Area, as well as Isla Edgar from Top Tier Capital. And we also have some major corporate investors as well from Asia. Okay, so enough about that. Let's talk about Skydeck and how it works. Most of this is not going to be very foreign for people who study how accelerators function. Okay, we run 2 cohorts per year. Each cohort lasts for roughly 6 months. So on the same day, we have about 20 to 25 companies that come in and start our program. On the same day, they pitch a demo day. You can think of that as their graduation. In between the entry to the exit, they're usually working from our space. Again, not right now, but they are in daily contact with us, our advisors, and our team as we help them build those companies. In order to qualify, you need to either be an affiliate of the UC, okay? So it doesn't have to be just Berkeley, but one of the founders or the key advisors for the company should have gone to one of the UCs, or, and this is the other part that, again, I want to point out is really exciting, you're a founder from outside of the US, okay? And this chunk of it is actually growing. More than half of the cohort for these last 2 cohorts have been outside of the US than have been from Berkeley. Okay? It's a highly competitive process. I have to update that slide because it's actually less, the acceptance rate is even lower than 3%. For the most current cohort, we had 1,600 companies apply. And from the 1,600, we only picked 24. Right? So again, extremely competitive. Oh, and I should mention the companies that we do take in, we will invest in them. We put in $100,000 into each of these companies on terms that quite honestly are below their market value. And most of our companies are raising at substantially higher than the terms that we give them, but they understand that they're giving up additional equity to gain access to our community and our platform. So again, what do you get from coming in? You get access to labs, you get to 500,000 Berkeley alumni, you work with our numerous corporate partners, which is also worth thinking about. We're talking about Procter & Gamble, talking about Ford, and you get connection to the faculty and lots of industry advisors. And what's really fun too, I should also briefly talk about the postdoc and the Haas MBA programs. We actually have hundreds of current Berkeley students and postdocs who are interning for our companies for free. So think about 2 or 3 PhDs from China, from Germany, you might have great technical talent, but you're looking for business help. Well, guess what? We have dozens of MBAs this summer who'll be working for our companies, usually for free, but for a small fraction of what they would earn on the open markets. And we have a special emphasis on both bio companies. That includes biopharma, synbio, diagnostics, as well as our chip track, which is run in a collaboration with Cadence and at TSMC, where we welcome fabulous chip companies that are working on AI chips, on accelerators, etc., because we can offer you free access to the tooling from Cadence, as well as free NPW runs at TSMC. And that's worth a lot of money. And then just a little bit about Fund 1. Again, it's a $24 million Fund 1. Top LPs included those guys, corporates, and we invest $100,000 into each of those companies. 1,600 companies applied into our last cohort. 60% of our companies that go through our program after demo day will go on and raise. So that's really great. All right, enough about that. Oh, actually, one more thing that I should mention. Why are the alumni willing to help? This is a very important point. They're willing to help because the fund, even though it's backed by private capital, will donate 50% of carry back to campus. Okay, so for those who don't understand exactly how a venture fund works, but in essence, when we make investments, we're in these companies go on to thrive and to do well and to exit. We get to take a portion of the profits. That's called carry. Half of those profits goes back to Berkeley. So we can go up to any Berkeley alumni and say, hey, boy, if you can take an hour to meet with this company and share your experience, make some introductions, UC Berkeley will benefit financially. And in this era of major issues with the budget at Berkeley, that really, really gets a lot of our alumni excited. And that's also why the deans are so involved in trying to make sure that our companies thrive. Because now UC Berkeley's financial success is tied to the financial success of our companies. And I think that's a win-win. Okay, let's talk about the main thesis beyond what we do. And these are some of the things that we've learned over these last two months. And I'll be candid, some of these impressions will change again. So don't blame me if I'm wrong in 6 months, but this is to the best of our knowledge now. The first thing that I would want to point out is that investors are actively looking for deals and writing checks. And I'm talking about early stage investing. I specifically reached out to our LPs. I've talked to the GPs at Kleiner Perkins, at Andreessen Horowitz, and more over these past weeks, just to understand their posture. Are they excited about investing? Are they holding back? And the truth is, by and large, they're actively investing. Okay, so anyone that tells you differently, they're wrong. VCs in the Valley have lots of dry powder. Many of them have raised huge funds in the last 12 to 18 months. And a little bit, what's really exciting here too is that unlike 2008 and 2009, the financial crisis, the LPs, so the people that actually give money to the VCs, all seem prepared to fund their commitments, right? So back in 2008 and 2009, part of the concern was that VCs, in theory, might have had a lot of committed capital, but they weren't able to write checks. That's not the case right now. Everybody is good to go. Late stage is hurting, okay? Because these companies are almost directly tied to the valuations that they would expect to get on the public markets. So when the public markets were crashing, although they've come back quite a bit, we first saw immediate impact on the late stage valuations. Early stage is different. The valuations at the early stage have not come down flat exactly the same way. What has happened is that the bubble has popped. Many VCs have said, this is great. Now I am not going to chase the hype. I'm not going to compete for crazy deals that just happen to have two hot founders and some huge concept. I'm going to wait for the right company at the right price. But that said, some of you might have read last week, Andreessen another round into Clubhouse, a startup that was just created 2 months ago, or maybe three months ago in February, and is now been valued at $100 million in 3 months. That's pretty good. So there's still quite a bit of hype out there as well, but certainly the expectation is that if you're pitching just a vision, you're going to have a harder time. VCs have really emphasized to me that they're not seeing bad behavior from other investors. They're not seeing many investors go back to the companies and say, hey, I know you need money. I want a bigger chunk of the company now. Or I'm going to force you out and do something else on the basis of the product and the technology that you've built. They really want founders to have the right incentives to win. VCs will tell you that they only want to own 15 to 20% of a company. They don't want to own 50%. They want the founders, the core people who have the vision and the energy and the ability to make the company thrive. They want them to have 50% of the company, if not more. So a seed investor explained to me as, look, if they're going to do a seed round and the right size of the round is $3 million, because that's what they really need to get traction and to make the progress that they should make and meet milestones over the next 12 to 18 months, then they're going to get $3 million. And I still only want 20% of the company. So as long as that's the case, the valuations haven't really changed. What you're not going to see is, maybe before there would have been a bidding war, and maybe instead of a 6 million, 8 million pre, it would have been up to 50, 25 million pre, just because I had to own that company. That's going away, but you're also not seeing a VC saying, hey, $2 million, I want 50% of the company because you don't have a better choice. That's not happening. So here's some good and bad about what's going on in that COVID. Bad number one, VCs still prefer to meet face to face. I've been told time and time again, investors are not comfortable writing that check over Zoom. Occasionally they will do it if someone that they trust extremely well comes in and swears for a team or swears for an idea, but they by and large would like to meet face by face, and a lot of deals are going to be held up until after the COVID era has gone away. Another bad for the founders out there, some investors have left the playing field. Okay, so a lot of the corporate funds, the automotive funds, have at least paused their investing. Maybe they'll be back. Some think that they won't be back because there's such a desperate drive for capital and cash for the corporate parents. There might not be any appetite or room for making venture investments. Angels have also been hit hard. They might be gone as well. Some angels, certainly not all, but for a lot of them who are averse to risk, they want to wait on the sidelines. And global funds. Okay, so there was a huge trend over the last 2 or 3 years of active investors from Europe, from Latin America, and of course from China, who are here looking to participate. But because of the travel bans as well as the other issues, that's become much more challenging, and that's not good for our founders out there. But what is good is that we're seeing a lot of soft founders have quit. There's really no way of knowing who's really committed. You can sit there and meet someone face to face and you can ask them the question, how determined are you to see this thing through? But you don't really know. And unfortunately, some of these companies that shouldn't exist because the founders were never committed, they'll hang around. And they'll hang around and they'll distract from you talking to your customers, because they're also reaching out to your customers. They'll distract the investors that you could be talking to. But now they're saying, hey, you know what? I don't think this is going to work. I want to go do something else. Okay, and I've seen multiple examples of that already. It's been easy for many founders to walk away. And what else is very exciting, I think, for the early stage companies out there? Hey, large corporates are exiting speculative projects. Okay, when you look at Uber, not only were they doing autonomous driving, they were doing everything else, from food delivery to micromobility to ad tech, even to in some respects. Now Uber is cutting massively and focusing their cash and their energy and their team on their core business. What does that mean? Well, that means there's more room for startups to grab that market share. You guys are more flexible. You guys are closer to the market, closer to the customer. This is an amazing opportunity for you. Okay, so conclusion on my part, this is a great time to build a great company, right? Many VCs will tell you that that's why they're so excited. That's why they're looking for deals. This is a great time to build a great company. It's a bad time to start an okay company, right? If you're not sure that you can pull this thing through, if you're wondering, if you're questioning, no, then maybe it's not a very good time for you. All right. I started by saying the role of the accelerator is much more than what some people think. You know, I've talked to a lot of founders before they come in who ask me, who seem to think at an accelerator, you learn about a business canvas, you learn about, you know, how to work with attorneys, and why is that interesting? And you know, I already know about this business. I've started a company before. I've raised money before. I don't need an accelerator. What you will see is that that's really no longer the case for many accelerators, especially ours. We're not focused on teaching. We're not focused on even fundraising. We're really focused on business building. And I see fundraising as really the outcome, the consequence of building a great business. I am very confident in our ability to put our companies in front of hundreds of investors. My only concern is, are the companies any good? Because if they're good, they will raise. It's that simple. So we're really not just for, you know, the stereotype of a couple smart founders and a PowerPoint slide. We really help pretty mature companies, and I'll walk through some of those examples. Most of these are global. Company one from Chile, they come in with $1.2 million in annual revenue. They are an enterprise SaaS product building a help desk, fully bootstrapped. So they haven't raised a penny from venture investors yet. They're here because they would like to raise their next round from institutional investors in the US, and they would like to meet customers in the US. But they just haven't gone through that process before. We can help them dramatically in thinking through how to sharpen their messaging, meeting customers here, and then of course ultimately on the fundraising side. Company two, also in this cohort, is from Germany, 750K in annual revenue last year. They're working on indoor positioning. There's a use case here for COVID, actually, and again, fully bootstrapped. Company three from Ireland and Turkey, again, very mature, came in with 50 plus paying clients as esports teams, and they have raised venture funding, okay? And then company four is coming out of India, co-founded by a faculty member from IIT, building a low light camera sensor. They actually have $3 million plus in grants. So they could obviously care less about the $100,000 that we would invest in them, but they understand. Come to Skydeck to meet customers, to meet advisors, to meet partners, and then ultimately to meet institutional investors. And then one more example of a Berkeley company as well. We have a Berkeley company where the founder has been successful in his last startup. Went through YC, actually, raised I think $26 million at this point from major investors. And just got to a scale where he didn't quite believe in the vision of that company anymore. So he stepped down as the CEO. He's still on the board of that company, but he wanted to do something new. Now, this person knows everything there is to know about early stage company creation, about venture industry, extremely connected, extremely credible. But by coming to us, we can help him accelerate the business construction part. Right? I really believe that in a lockdown ecosystem, so right now with the fact that we're all staying home, at least here in the US and in Europe, that continues to be the case, accelerators have become more important. All of those companies picked us before there was a lockdown. But now that there is one, boy, they're really glad that they're here, and I'm gonna walk through exactly what their journey is, so you can kind of understand why they feel that way. So month one, what's that like? We have BAM session. So this is pretty typical, right? Many accelerators have this kind of thing, but I would just say that we're blessed by the community that we're able to tap into. We have people that are coming in that's talking about investor relations, storytelling, cap table structuring, how to do enterprise sales, how to do cold outreach to leads, very practical stuff. We don't have faculty teaching you an academic concept. We have founders from our community, we have investors from our community telling you, here's the next email that you should write, right? So extremely valuable. We also have, in the first month alone, we have 7 speed dating meet and greets. For those who don't know what that looks like, it's basically over the course of about 3 hours, you'll meet 9 people. Okay, it used to be in person. Now it's all on Zoom. There are one-to-one discussions for about 20 to 30 minutes. You're asking them for feedback. You're asking them to see if they want to be part of you as a key advisor, and I will talk about that a little more. But more importantly, it's a great chance to just instantly build your network here in the Bay Area. You go from knowing nobody to knowing 70 to 90 very connected people in 1 month. Okay, so extremely valuable. Who are the advisors? This is kind of a not attractive slide. I just did a copy paste from a different presentation. But the basic idea is that we have roughly 250, but really there's many more than that. These are the ones that we are formally have signed an MOU for. Every startup that goes to our cohort gets 3 key advisors that are assigned to them. And if you do the math, there's 20 companies, 3 key advisors per company. So a lot of our advisors don't even get to be a key advisor. There's actually competition where they say, oh boy, can I convince these guys that I can help them? So it's really fascinating. They help them with everything: strategy, product strategy, market strategy, fundraising strategy, and of course, lots and lots of introductions. Just to give you guys a quick taste of who these are advisors might be, these could be experienced founders. So coming true of Kabam, who sold his company for, I think, 500 million. Mark Tarpenning, the co-founder of Tesla. He was the co-founder of Tesla before Elon Musk came in. Jack McCauley of Oculus, Kai Huang of Guitar Hero. I could go on. We have Tony Xu of DoorDash, and more. We also have leading professors, and actually what's also interesting is that all 3 of these professors are also founders. Ken Goldberg, Don Song, and Amy Hurd. We have lots of investors that are also key advisors. Some of these are funds. A lot of angel investors as well. We have leading senior angels from Sacramento Angels, from Sandhill, from Band of Angels, Life Science Angels, HBS Angels, MIT Angels. Basically, if there's an angel community in the Bay Area, we're pretty plugged into them. We also have executives. Right? These are people that have senior roles at all of those companies that you see below. Okay, so you can imagine how meeting 70 to 80 of these people, telling them what you do, and getting them excited about what you're working on can be helpful. Month 2 through month 5. This is kind of repetitive, but basically at this stage, it's pretty open-ended. We do have weekly sessions to keep them in touch. We're helping them hire. That's something that I should have mentioned through those Haas MBAs and the undergrads. Most of our companies already have 5 to 10 interns through us. We bring in speakers. A lot of these are upon their request. So they say, hey, listen, I would love to meet the guy at Google who wrote TensorFlow. We went out and we got him, and he came in and he did a session. We have social sessions. I think that's, again, very important in this COVID era. People are locked at home. They can't hang out with other founders. We make sure they hang out constantly. And they're meeting every other week with those 3 key advisors that I talked about. And then all the advisors will meet every month to go through and say, hey, look, here's what company A needs. Here's what company B needs. Do you know anybody who's in the car industry? Do you know anyone who's a CIO for a hospital? Right? Those kinds of collaborations is also quite important. And on our part, we are also actively meeting every single company at least twice a month. We sit down, we go through LinkedIn, we figure out which people that went to Berkeley or which people that our advisors might know are helpful to your business. You give me a list of 5 people. I want to meet the guy at Target who's responsible for their building management. Okay, let's find them on LinkedIn. Let's find a way to get to them. And we will take on the role of contacting them. We do it on behalf of UC Berkeley. And we've had a very high conversion rate. So reaching out to people cold and saying, listen, we're the official accelerator for UC Berkeley. Can you help out? At least a 30% conversion rate cold. And that's only because in some cases, we can't find the person's contact info. When we find the person's contact info, that conversion rate is even higher. And then month 6, this is what most founders think they care the most about: investors. So we will bring in 150 seed and A stage investing firms to meet our companies on a one-on-one basis. All of the major funds in the Valley, so including our investors and us, of course, but also Andreessen, Klein Perkins, as I mentioned, Benchmark, Excel. They're all going to send partners to come and meet our companies in a one-on-one basis. And then at Demo Day, 650 investors are there. In person, historically, what's going to happen this time virtually, I don't really know. But I would just say that, our Demo Day is forecast to be September the 14th. And when you think about this class of founder who doesn't have those connections here, who have even a hard time flying into the Bay Area right now, I think our ability to make these interactions with advisors and investors and customers possible is more important than ever. And that's about it. So these are some of our faculty, not very important, but I will pause there. And what's the best way of doing some Q&A?
Yes, so thank you, Chon. Thank you for sharing. It's great sharing on the landscape, on the accelerator's role, and also very fruitful story about the Skydeck. So for audience who want to raise questions for Chon, please type down your answers by using the Q&A below. Yeah. I will first throw some questions here. So my first questions for Chon is, you mentioned that in your previous slides that a bubble has popped. So ideas built on vision and hype are hurting. And also you mentioned some large companies are creating certain playing field. So could you give us an example about the future opportunities for startups to explore on?
Yeah, well, so for example, I talked about the Uber example. Autonomous driving is a space that has some challenges. Don't get me wrong. From both a go-to-market, from a fundraising, there are some challenges. But one of the greatest challenges is when everybody felt that Uber and Waymo and everyone else had that space figured out, and we're putting in billions of dollars. Boy, how the heck am I going to go into that space and win? Investors weren't interested in backing that. But now we're in a new era where Uber is just going to be focused on bringing people from point A to point B, and not firing too many employees in that process. So guess what? Now there is a chance.
All right. My second question is a kind of question that I always wanted to ask, but it's how would you compare Skydeck with StartX Stanford?
Yeah, very different. I mean, StartX, I have some friends involved there. There's quite a difference. So from a legal perspective, it's very different because StartX is actually not an official campus program. It's run by students, right? It's run by the community. Whereas in contrast, this is not. But on the other side, I would just say that I think because of that, we had to attract capital from private investors, and that's forcing us to be more disciplined. That's forcing us to really only pick very, very good companies that we're very confident will raise venture money, even before venture investors put in their money. StartX will join rounds. If and when you're able to raise money, they will come in for 10% of your round. But beyond that, there's no filter. So they can actually have many more companies than we would have on our platform. And of course, they're only constrained to people that have an affiliation to the school. But it's still a very good program for companies that fit that profile. But again, we're really building companies from scratch with founders from outside of the US.
Thanks for the clarification. So let's now answer the questions from the audience. So the first question is from Elga.
Yeah.
So since the fund is backed by Asia, China investor, what is the reaction as to the latest Bloomberg announcement on delisting Chinese companies and the potential it will include Alibaba, Baidu? So Skydeck is not backed by Asia investors, but I would like to hear your thoughts on the we heard the term a lot recently, the decoupling or deglobalization. I would like to hear your comments on that.
Boy, I mean, that's a 1 hour long conversation. I mean, the first thing that I will say is that the fact that we have these corporates as investors is a different issue, right? So we do have some Asian, some Chinese corporates as LPs, but because they're just providing capital, it's a passive investment. There's no direct impact from that point of view. But the more interesting question that you asked was that how did I feel about that decoupling story? And the sad truth is I think it's reaching a certain speed that it's becoming very difficult to not see it continue all the way to the end, right? I mean, we are already seeing investors decouple first, fewer investors from Asia, including those corporates. Alibaba, Baidu used to be very active investors here, investing in early stage technology companies because they wanted to see that technology taken to market. And they wanted to have the option to possibly acquire them, not for any evil purpose, but because they happen to have a huge need for innovation, and the founders here have a huge need for market. It was a win-win, but now because of the political consequences of this, they're pulling out. That's true for both Baidu and Alibaba. They've really, really massively cut down their investment activities here in the US. So I find that unfortunate. Where will it ultimately lead with the listing question in particular? I think it's a good opportunity for Hong Kong, quite candidly. And we're seeing Alibaba already going to Hong Kong. I think that Baidu will probably head to Hong Kong as well. It's not too late to see this trend end, but there are definitely some real challenges.
All right, thanks, Chon. So the next question is from Marianne. What are the current investment thesis that Skydeck is focusing on? How about fintech such as InvestTech?
Yeah. So, sorry, you guys might hear my dog as well, because that's what you get from working at home. So Skydeck invests very broadly. We will invest in any thesis that we think that venture investors would want to follow on with. That includes biopharma, robotics, lots of enterprise SaaS and AI, and that beyond. Absolutely, we will do fintech. I personally have a background as a quant fund manager, so I started and ran my own hedge fund. So I will forever have a lot of interest for InvestTech. So yeah, we're absolutely open to the possibility. I don't know that we have any strong corporate partners right now in InvestTech, but we are talking to BlackRock, and we do have some advisors in that category too.
All right. Next question is from Larry Wong. Larry is also the plug and play EIR. So he has raised a very practical question. So how does Skydeck help foreign startup founders solving the visa problem to stay in the US for 6 months?
Yeah, well, no one except for President Trump can solve that visa problem. But we do our best to help in the sense that we have lots of attorneys in our ecosystem who we've seen work closely with our founders. I would say the most common pathway for founders coming in is the O1. We have a lot of our attorneys can assess if these founders can qualify for a O1 and then try to get them in on that way. We're not doing, in the past, there have been experiments around the H-1B in schools. We're not doing any of that. We're not trying to get into any kind of involvement indirectly on that side of it all. But what I will say is, ultimately, we've made 120 investments now. So you figure 200 foreign founders in the last 2.5 years. We have not lost one founder because of issues on the visa. So despite the reputation, despite what has been said about immigration policy in the US, what we found is that for talented founders, there's usually a way through it.
Next question is from
Hey Z. An old friend, yeah.
Great. Next question is from Zixuan.
Yeah.
So is the medical field mostly bubbled field now? And will the market government will build better comprehensive medical system to create a new market demand in this section?
I'm not sure what you mean by a bubble field, but in terms of special opportunities that are presented by COVID, I think most investors that I've talked to actually feel like that the direct COVID impact on investments, both for biotech, for biopharma, for the health network overall, it's not really going to have that much of an impact. I mean, it's only a question of time, right? Maybe it'll be 6 months, maybe it'll be 12 months, maybe it'll be two years, but at some point there will be a effective treatment, there will be some kind of a vaccine, we will move on, and most people think that it will be pretty much business as usual in that field. So I actually have not seen a lot of investors in the US kind of say, oh, okay, well, hold on a second. Because of COVID, I'm now investing in this class of company.
Mm-hmm. Next question, the question is about how the Skydeck program works. So from AM. So may you explain how the speed and the meet works? 7 to 9 people per session?
Yeah. The meet and greets. So basically, there was a little bit of a matching process in advance where we try to understand what areas you think you have a need in, and we try to understand what areas our advisors can be helpful for. So if you're a biotech company, there's no reason to have you talk to someone whose experience is in trying to sell a consumer product. But beyond that, it's just the way it's worked virtually right now is that each of the companies have a channel in Zoom. And then we send out a clear schedule to each of the advisors that says from 5 to 5:20, you're in room 1. 5:20 to 5:40, you're in room 2. 5:40 to 6, you're in room 3. It's exactly that cadence. After 3 hours, you will have met 9 companies. You will have that 20-minute conversation in our experience is just about right for that first chat. It's enough for you to understand what they're working on. Mm-hmm. Not enough for you to be bored by it. And it's enough for you to decide, hey, let's chat more. Let's hang out more after this whole thing is over so that I can give you more feedback on the company. And then for the founder side, it's a great chance to get immediate feedback. It's like, oh, okay, when I describe this pain point to them, the 70 to 90 smart people that I met, half of them said, that's dumb. what does that mean? What does that tell me about my business?
All right, so we're almost running out of time, so we will have time for the very last question. So let's pick a complicated one. So let's go with this one. So it's from Felix. So are your accelerator program industry specific? Do you think industry specific accelerator programs would be more beneficial to both founders and the marketplace? The Skydeck programming was into medtech and digital healthcare.
So the first part of the question is absolutely, I do think it makes sense to have a thesis for certain accelerator programs, especially in something like medtech, where you need specialized access to people with expertise in the FDA, with contacts in the healthcare world. So yes, vertical accelerators make a lot of sense. It's good for founders, it's good for advisors, it's good for investors. Skydeck does do that. So we mandate, or we aim for 10% of our company, so roughly 4 to 6 every single year, are going to be from a hard bio background. So these include a couple biopharma, diagnostics, medtech, digital health. We actually have, I think, 6 to 7 in this cohort. So that is something that we focus on. And what we did as part of that bio track, which is what we call this special channel for those companies, we have a specialized group of about 50 advisors with big pharma expertise. We have a CEO for John Muir, the hospital network. We have the CMIO for UC Davis. We have some really, really major players in that side of the world coming in just to meet the BioTrack companies.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Chon. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And thank you all audience for joining us tonight. And also regarding our upcoming episode next Thursday, we will be having Howard Chow. He is a principal at Dune Capital. And he is going to share a very, very interesting topic, the strategies for Chinese cross-border entrepreneurs in the deglobalization world. So in Howard's background, he has been a lawyer for many, many years, has been practicing in Japan, East Asia, and the US, and now he is an investor. So if you guys are interested in learning more about that topic, so stay tuned with us to join us next Thursday. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.